We are back for another installment of what seeds you should be sowing, and this time it's August. And if you are Canadian or live in a northern climate, then you must feel the same way I do, where if it's August, it means that summer's already over. It honestly feels like we only have July and August of like the good temperatures and the high heats, and then we're back to the fall and the cold. But typical, everyone starts getting excited for sweater weather or, seasonal drinks. But we actually still have a lot of things that you can still be planting in August. And I think like the biggest tip is to check for how many days of frost-free time you have left. So everyone is different, whether you're zone 5 like I am or a colder zone or warmer. You definitely want to check that out and make sure that you are planting varieties that fit within that time. So before I get any further, my name is Bree from Urban Gardening Canada, and I garden in Ottawa zone 5. And my first frost date is anywhere between October 1st and the 10th. So if we're in the beginning of August now, for really quick math, that's about 60 days that I have left, which means that I really should only be planting anything that is within that 60-day timeline, unless it can handle a light frost or I'm planning to grow under cover, which I always do. So this means putting up poly for hoop houses. And if you want to be growing under cover this year, just to extend your season, then I highly recommend checking out my hoop house videos that I will link for you below. So with that, let's get into the vegetables first. When you're planting seeds, especially direct sowing them in August when it's really, really hot and sunny, the most important thing you can do is make sure that they stay well watered. So this can often mean watering in the morning and in the evening wherever you've sown those seeds. You can also water them and then put something over top of the soil, such as a piece of poly that you're not using, just to help keep that moisture in until they germinate. It's just really important that you're watching to pull it off when they do germinate so you don't end up roasting them at the same time. But watering is key in this type of heat if you want to make sure that you grow something successful that loves the cool weather but is starting off right now. And so the first one is radishes. Radishes only take 30 days to harvest. So really you have any time in August to be starting them. Even if you're in a colder than the zone 5 here, you do have those 30 days and they like the cool temperatures anyways. And since they grow so fast, you do really want to make sure that they stay watered both as seeds and as seedlings, because if you underwater your radish, that's where you get that spicy or more peppery flavor that is, I don't know, I personally don't like it. So the more you water them, the less that flavor is going to come out. So making sure that if you are planting them now in the heat, you just make sure that you keep them really well watered. All right, next up is carrots. Carrots is a really good one. This one you don't have to worry about the 60 days to maturity quite so much because they can handle a frost. And oftentimes people actually keep their carrots in the ground over winter and pull them up in the springtime to eat. So therefore the 60 days is a little bit more of a loose timeline. And you can also harvest them as baby carrots too. I have pulled up a few of mine because I was giving them proper spacing. So I was eating baby carrots just last week, which I was loving. And then I sowed more of them because of course I'm going to want to have carrots in the fall time too. And this is one of those ones where, since the seeds have to stay essentially on the top of the soil, it's really hard to keep them well watered. So putting something over top of the soil to help hold that moisture in is really going to benefit them until they germinate. All right, my all-time favorite, beans. There's always space for more beans in your garden. I literally just pulled up my broad beans, and in place for those I planted beans, carrots, and radish. And again, they just grow really fast. They can take anywhere from 45 to 60 days. So this is a really good one to be adding in, and you can freeze them, blanch them, pickle them, whatever it is. So this is one that even if you grow them and you get a bunch of them, you can either give them away to friends and family, or you can put them in the freezer, or however you like to preserve them all winter long. So that way you don't have to buy any beans over the winter time and you have something to include in any of your cooking during that time. All right, peas is the next one. So I also pulled out my peas. They are now done. They were getting all yellow and dried up. So I did pull out my pea vines and I've replaced them with new ones. they usually can take up to 60 days. So I am putting them to their test right now, and I have planted those, and I'm also keeping those really well watered. If you do grow them, just make sure that you have a place for them to grow up, and you might want to protect the seedlings for the first little bit because animals really like to eat those tender pea shoots, which we can also eat too. So if you wanted to eat them that way as well, that works. But this is a really good time to be starting your fall peas, so I definitely recommend doing them sometime in August. All right, next up is lettuce. Now, lettuce doesn't love this heat, so either plant this later in August, start them inside for your fall garden, or find a bolt-resistant variety. So for example, head lettuces are a really good variety that doesn't bolt quite as much, so that could be your butterhead variety such as Tom Thumb, and there's some red varieties as well. But I would definitely avoid any that are labeled to say that they prefer the cold weather, and I would wait until September to be planting those specific varieties. All right, next on the list is spinach, and I know you're watching this at the beginning of August, but I definitely recommend waiting until the end of August to be planting this one, as the temperatures are slowly starting to wind down. Although my family lives in northwestern Ontario, and apparently it's 8 degrees every single morning, so if it's a cold season for you, then you can plant them now, and they're probably gonna do just fine. But here in Ottawa, every single day is at least 30 degrees. It's 30 degrees right now, but at least there's a nice breeze. So if you are experiencing hot temperatures like we are here, then I recommend waiting until the end of August to sow these, because otherwise your spinach is going to germinate and it's going to go directly to seed because it does not like this heat. So depending on your weather, I would modify when in August you're planting it, but I definitely recommend by the end of August that you can throw it in the garden because it's going to pick up those cool temperatures of September and October. All right, I mentioned this in last month's video, but Swiss chard is another really good one. You can direct sow it outside, or you can start it inside. And what I love about it is it's heat resistant because it has succulent type stems on it, so it's really good for the heat and the droughts, but it also absolutely is great for cold temperatures, and it can handle really cold temperatures, especially once it becomes a mature plant, which it would be by the time September or October rolls around. And so for me, this is one that I absolutely love to include in my fall garden, and it grows into huge bountiful plants that you can always be saving into winter time. You can cut them up and freeze them and have fresh greens all winter long. And the benefit of planting Swiss chard now is that you are avoiding the leaf miner, which is one of the biggest pests for these leafy greens, especially Swiss chard. So if you're planting it now, you get to have all of the benefits of the Swiss chard leaves without the leaf miner pest being a problem for you. And then similar to that is kale. Kale is beautiful for fall gardens because it always tastes better after it gets hit by its first frost, which means now is such a good time to be direct sowing it, or again, you can start this one inside. Now, the reason that I say start some of these inside is because you can control the temperature better, you can control the watering better, and overall the plants can just survive better than if you're outside direct sowing it because the soil can dry up. However, you can still go ahead and do that, and with kale you're going to get a really great harvest between now and your first frost date. And as long as your plants are a good size, it means that you'll be able to have them get hit by frost. It's not going to kill the plant, but it's actually just going to make it taste better. All right, so this is another good one to direct sow, and that is short season cabbage. So there are cabbages out there. I have one that's called Tierra, I'm pretty sure is the variety, and it's only a 45-day cabbage, which means planting it now means you are going to get a full head of cabbage before your first frost date, or if you're in a colder zone than me, you're going to get, likely still going to get it before your first frost date or right on that brink of that. And so it makes for the perfect variety to get an entire head in before the winter time comes. So I definitely recommend looking up a cabbage and finding those short days to maturity varieties. All right, next up is kohlrabi. I have grown this a few times, but I wouldn't say that I grow it all of the time because in my house in Burlington, I had a insect called the Swede midge, and what it would do was split my kohlrabi in half. So I wasn't able to grow it anymore because they live in the soil for, I think, up to 3 years. And here I've never really grown it because for me, they never really get that large and the skin gets so thick that you don't get a ton of food out of it. But if you're limited on what you can grow because your season is short or because it's very cold where you are, kohlrabi is a really good choice to get something into your garden that can withstand the cold temperatures and can get you food before your first frost date. So, and actually, if you've never tried it before, it's a fun plant to grow because it grows this bulb on the base of the soil, and it's actually really interesting. So I do recommend, if you've never grown it before, to give it a go. It doesn't take up a ton of space in your garden, and it's just something that's kind of fun to try at least once until you decide if you like it or not. Next up is turnips. I've actually never grown turnips before, but I do know that it is a cold season crop and it can be grown in the 60-day timeline. So if this is something that you like to eat, or if it's something you want to try for the first time, I recommend getting turnips. And if you think about all of the plants that I've listed so far, this is a really wide range of foods that you can still be direct sowing in August. And sometimes it feels like we're really limited on what we can grow, but I'm actually giving you 18 crops to choose from, which I think is pretty cool. So if you are really looking for that variety and you want to try something new, or if you absolutely love turnips, then I definitely recommend adding this one to your garden. All right, next up is beets. This is another one that can handle both the heat and the cool weather. And again, you can find varieties that are going to come days to maturity within the timeline that you have. I have planted a few of them just recently too as part of my succession sowing. I have a nice rainbow variety, and this is just another great one. You get both the leafy green of the beet tops and the beet itself, making it a really good addition to your garden. And in terms of vegetables, I have one left, and again, this is one that I've never grown before, but collards is also another leafy green that does really well in the cold. I haven't added this one to my garden yet, but I have seen that they can grow quite large and they can supply quite a lot of food. So if this is something that you're interested in, that you really enjoy collards, or you really like to have bigger plants that can give you a ton of food and handle that cold weather, then I definitely recommend adding collards to your garden for the fall. All right, before we get into the next plant, I do want to mention my course that I have available for you. So if you are a new to intermediate gardener, this course is absolutely for you, and it's going to help you make sure that you know exactly how to be taking care of your garden for the rest of the season going into fall, including how to close down your garden for the winter time in a way that is sustainable for the soil health, for the insects around you, and for the animals, so that way that you can build a better garden for next year. So if you're interested in grabbing my course, I will put a link in the description below, and there's also a free preview so you can take a tour of it. There are videos, workbooks, lectures, quizzes, all kinds of things to make sure that you walk away with a ton of knowledge. And there's over 100 actionable tips in there, and the course is very affordable. I'm not making a course that is out of anybody's price range, because to me it's really important to keep gardening accessible. So I want to give you tons and tons and tons of knowledge without charging you tons and tons and tons of money. So I definitely recommend checking it out, especially if you're hoping to grow your gardening skills for the remainder of the year and also build a more sustainable and resilient garden, because the weather has been out of control and it's not going to get any better. So it's really important that you learn these skills now, because you're going to need them for future years. So again, I'll leave that in the description below, and let's get into the next seed. We're on to the herbs, and there's really two herbs that absolutely love the cold weather, and that is dill and cilantro. So if you were growing it in the springtime, then right now your dill and cilantro will both be in flower. So this means that they're finishing their life cycle, they're going to get pollinated, and they're going to turn into getting their seeds on them. So around this time of year, when I do get seed heads, I usually just brush them off and let them drop back into the garden again. And a lot of times they'll regrow for a fall garden. But you can also direct sow any seeds that you may have, and they're going to be able to grow in the fall before we get our first frost, which means that you have access to fresh herbs before we come to winter. And plus, if you allow your spring crops to go fully to seed and you brush them off and drop them in the garden, then those ones are going to overwinter, and they're actually going to pick back up and be volunteer or winter sown dill and cilantro for next spring. So I definitely recommend adding more to your garden right now, and then once your current ones finish going to seed or have dried up, if they haven't already, to drop those ones in the garden, so that way you can get a little bit of planting for this year and some for next year. All right, so I have 3 plants left have for you, and these are your flowers. And the first one is nasturtiums. And why I'm suggesting this one is for a couple of reasons. Nasturtiums can actually handle temperatures down to about -4 degrees Celsius, which makes them really good for the cool season. And if you plant them now, you may not get flowers by the time your first frost comes, but the entire plant is edible, which means that you can be eating the leaves in the meantime. So you can be adding these to your salads, or you could be making nasturtium chips, which I have a recipe for on my website if you wanted to check that out. It's a different take on kale chips, but because it's edible and might even flower for you in the time before your frost comes, then it means that you can enjoy the flowers, the bees can enjoy the flowers, you can eat the flowers, or you can even eat the leaves. So I think that this is a really great addition to any fall garden. The next one is calendula. Calendula doesn't like the heat right now, but it does love the cool temperatures of the fall time. So by planting it now, you can get some blooms for the fall time, which again means that you're giving some late season food to any of the bees or other pollinators that are still hanging out before the end of the season. And I did a video on the collapse of bee populations. So it's actually really important to make sure that you do have flowers and food available for our bees and other pollinators by the time the season is coming to an end. So if you did want to check that video out, I'll put it right here, and then I'll also put it in the description below, because this is something that we really need to be paying closer attention to and making sure that we are planning for this fall time. And the last one is alyssum. Somebody told me in the comments how I was mispronouncing it, so, and now I can't remember. I think it must be alyssum because I say alyssum. So anyway, alyssum, this one is a tiny little flower that kind of cascades around, and I found out that it is super cold hardy purely because I had it in my garden last year, and I swear to you, this flower flowered until the snow fell. It passed every single frost and everything, and the only reason it died was because snow fell on it and buried it. I could not believe it. So this one to me is like extremely cold hardy. So you can get it in this cute white, which is what I have, a nice deep purple. There's all these colors for it, and it's really, really good to bring in parasitic wasps and to help really small native pollinators. And this is one that I include in my garden all year round because it brings in parasitic wasps. So it is helping me battle the pests in my garden. But if you don't have any right now, I definitely recommend getting the seeds and direct sowing them in the ground. So that way either you can have them for this fall, but even if they don't take, they will germinate. Winter sown variety, they will germinate in the springtime and you'll get flowers then. Mine readily self-seeds, so once you get it into a good spot, it's going to seed itself and come up year after year. So I absolutely love including this one in my garden, and I recommend that you add it to yours as well. And that is everything. That was 18 different seeds that you can be direct sowing in August. So even though summer might feel like it's over, it's not. We have tons more that we can be doing. And August is prime harvesting season. So it means that you should be getting a ton of food out of your vegetable garden, or if you grow flowers, then you should be making beautiful bouquets by now. And I do hope that you enjoyed today's video and you found it helpful. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in this video here. Bye.